Welcome everyone to my channel, and what emotional book we have today. I'm usually not so much crying of the books or of the movies, but in this one I was finished yesterday. I read this book at 10 p.m. and until 2 I even couldn't sleep because I was thinking, was crying. And that's very emotional book, and I think it wouldn't be unforgettable. And this book is Kristin Hannah, The Nightingale. So what about this book? It's about two sisters who lived during World War II in France. By the way, have you been in France? I've been. It's a beautiful country with interesting people who prefer speak French. And okay food, and rich history. So if you haven't been, this country is definitely worth to visit. So in this book, it's just like such an emotional book. I wasn't expecting it. When I was start to read this book, I was very skeptical because what American can know about our European history, right? But during the book, I understood that author for sure did research and a lot of research how it was in the reality. And that's the point of the historical fiction, because when you read in some fantasy books, some sci-fi and other genres, and you are okay when characters is suffering, dying, and other stuff happen to them, you of course feel sad, but that's okay. But what is different about the historical fiction books, that when you read it, you know that it was in the reality the same, and probably even worse. And of course, still it's fiction, still you understand that these characters, they wasn't in the real life. It wasn't them, but it was others who were suffering the same how they were, and probably even worse. Girl who was inspired the hour after, she was in the real life, and she's from Belgium, and her name is Andrea de John. And after was speak with other women who will survive, women who were the part of the French resistance move. And so she was speak with them, she speak with their children, with their grandchildren. So what is after telling us about the story of two sisters, it was based on the dozens of the other women stories. I would warn you that this book for sure will make you cry. I'm the person who usually not crying of the books, so I'm crying. I hope that I wouldn't be crying during this video. And for sure, I was read this book only one time, and I wouldn't repeat, never in my life, read again this book. This very good book, very emotional book. It's for sure was written by American author, because a little bit remind me American movie with a lot of stuff going on. This book is definitely worth to read to understand that you have to appreciate what you have in your life, and definitely you living better than people who live in the 20th centuries. And when some people thinking that in the past people were living better, you definitely have to read this book, because if you have electricity in your house, if you have gas in your house, if you have food in your table, so you're already pretty lucky people. And that's what we pretty often forgot during our life, that we are rich because we have pretty comfortable life. Compare what it was in the life of the people during the war. In general, war is very bad. A lot of people suffering. We can see now in the world how it is. Still, we need to learn how to live together in the peace. But all this book, it's good reminder us what we should avoid, and that we have to try to look how to make agreement between each other and reach the peace. That's the most important. So this book is definitely worth your attention. Please buy, please read this book and feel what I will feel. It's pretty hard book, but it is worth to read it to understand how beautiful life you have now. So definitely this book 5 from the 5. What's most important for me when I read in the book is emotional part. It's some teaching part, and also good story, right? Interesting, that you would read and want more read, and that it would be unforgettable. And this book is unforgettable, would be for me. So short story, what is happened in this book. We have said before a story of two sisters. Their mother was died when they were pretty young, and after World War One. How we see on the beginning that their family were pretty happy together. Father was pretty warm, and he very loved his children. He very loved her mother, but he was brought during the World War One. And when he back from the war, in the short period, mother was died too, and it's what is totally broke the father, and he is start to drink alcohol. He make distance from him and his daughters. One daughter was around 14 years. Her name is Vianne, and second daughter was pretty young. She was only 5 years old, and her name is Isabelle. He didn't want to do anything with his daughter. He just wanted to make as far as possible distance between him and his daughters. Vianne's older sister, she was find another guy, and she became pregnant from him, and father was give to them a house in some village far from Paris, and he says that Vianne supposed to take little Isabelle with her because he doesn't want that any of his daughter would be staying with him in his apartment in Paris. So Vianne took little sister, and they with her husband they moved to the house what was from generation to generation from the Vianne family. Unfortunately, pretty fast Vianne found out that she has miscarriage, and it happened few more times, and she couldn't deal with Isabelle. She didn't want that Isabelle would be like next to them, and they sent Isabelle back to her father. Her father didn't want Isabelle to be around him, so he started to send her during all her life to different boarding schools. And of course, little Isabelle, she didn't want it. She wants to be next to her father. She wants to have a family. She wants to be loved. And sister was seems too busy for this, and father didn't want her. And she was one time by other to escape from the school. And when she was escaped and back to the Paris, to apartment of her father, he again sent her back to the other schools. And it was until the war started, because last time when Isabelle came back to her father's apartment in Paris, war is started. Nazi is started occupied Paris, and father he is decided to send Isabelle, who is on the time was 18 years old, to her older sister. So Isabel's father sent her to her older sister, and during this time we see that it started a lot of panic to be in the Paris, and people try to escape from Paris to somewhere more peaceful territory. And friends of her father, he was took Vianne to their car, and on the way to her older sister, car couldn't drive anymore because it was not enough gas. So Isabelle supposed to walk, and it was miles and miles. It was couple days walking to the Vianne. She didn't have any food, she didn't have any water, and she was lost her father's friends. So she was trying to walk to her older sister, and when she was come to the forest, what she's supposed to cross on the way, she find another man who was next to the fire and tried to prepare rabbit. And that's how she met with her future love. His name is Gayon. And on that time, French was open all prisons, so he was escaped from the prison. They decided together continue their way to Gayon's family, and on the way he would help Isabelle to reach her goal, to come to her older sister. And during when they're walking, it was a lot of bombs come, and they seen how it's people dying, a lot of blood, a lot of suffering, and that's when Isabelle decided that she supposed to do something during this war. She's supposed to help people and stop the Nazi. Gayon was suggest his help to Isabelle that they can together fight against of Nazi, but on the way he understood that she is pretty young and probably she is not ready for this, and he left her when he was bringing her to her older sister's house. During this time, we also read about her older sister, and we know that her husband was mobilized to the war, and she was left in this house with her daughter. And they have some money, but of course it wasn't enough during the war. They start to live together, and of course things start to become worse and worse. Nazi came to the village also, and one of the Nazi, was visited to live in the house of older sister of Vianne. His name is Captain Beck, and how we can see he is have some respect to sisters, and in general he seems like a good man, and he is trying to ignore everything what is Isabelle allowed to herself to do, how she is rude, and how she is trying to fight back of everything. In meantime, sisters has fighting all the time about how to act during the war. Because Isabelle, she thinking that they're supposed to do something, they're supposed to fight back or try at least. Vianne, she has a daughter, and she's thinking that they need to wait until her husband back from the war and try to quite survive and try to protect family. Eventually, Isabelle finds her way to join to resistance network, and she starts to do some small tasks what they give to her, and afterwards she is back to Paris, and she is reopen her father's bookstore, because he was closed during the war, because Nazi was just give him a list of the book what he can sell, and he didn't like it, and he decided to close the bookstore. But Isabelle, she was reopen it because it was help to her to secretly communicate with these resistance movements. For beginning, she helping with some leaflets and small messages, and eventually she start to have a more dangerous mission. One time when she was back to home, she noticed some shades, and she eventually understood that it's airmen, some pilot from the England, and she wanted to help him, so she was bring him to a group of people who was fight against of Nazi to ask for help, and they were said that they were thinking about a long time, but they have other pilots who needs to help, but they have no idea how to do it, because how to cross the border, it only can be across the Pyrenees to Spain, these mountains, and they didn't know how to cross them. But Isabelle's father has had some friend who could did it, who knows how to cross it, and she was willing to help pilots to cross it. And that's how she started to become a Nightingale. She was start to cross with the pilots these mountains. Eventually, she was helped 120 something pilots to cross the mountain. What about Vianne during this time? Vianne tried to quiet to live and follow the rules what is Nazi was telling them what they supposed to do. She has a good her best friend Rachel, and Rachel, she has two children. One is the same age what is Sophie, Vianne's daughter. Her name is Sarah, and Sophie and Sarah, they're both 10 years old. And before war, Rachel was born another child. It was 3 months before the war, and she was called him Ari, and they were Jewish. Vianne and Rachel, they were school teachers, and when it war starts, when it was 1941, and it was Star Captain back to live with Vianne, one day he was asked her to write a list of the all homosexual Jews, free men, and others who was seems wrong to the Nazi people. And she did, and of course on this list was your best friend. What it was happen next? First, Nazi was fired from all position, all Jewish. Afterwards, they were limited their moves. They could only came from the house to outside. It was only for 1 hour from 3 p.m. until 4 p.m. And how you understood it was very bad because they were hungry. It wasn't enough money for anybody, for French people, for Jews, for nobody. All of them supposed every day come to the downtown and stand a line to get some food. And usually it was something small, or it was like something what is not enough food, because all food, meat, bread, wine, everything, it was took by Nazis. So people were hungry, they tried to survive, they didn't have gas, they didn't have electricity, they didn't have any food, and they couldn't buy any clothes, so it was during all these years pretty bad for everybody. People was dying, they didn't have medicine, and nobody cared about this. And first, Vianne didn't do anything. She was pretty quiet and listening, but when it was more and more dangerous for her friends, for other people, she decided to do do. Even when she is fair, she still was do first. She was try to hide some food to her neighbors, to her best friend, and her children. Afterwards, when it happened that Jewish who wasn't born in Paris, and Rachel wasn't born in Paris, so Nazis started to drag them to the working camp, where of course it was hard and mostly of them would die there. Afterwards, it was any Jewish who were born in France also. They all went to the working camp. On the first wave of dragging Jewish to the camp, Captain Beck, who was unexpectable kind man, and he was help Vianne a lot. He was bring food to her and to her child. He was warned her that she probably need to hide her best friend Sarah because next day it would come Nazi and probably would take her. And she need to hide her best friend Rachel because next day is supposed to come Nazi and took her. First, what is Rachel and Vianne decided to do? They decided to escape to the free zone because on that time Paris was divided to two zones. It was free zone and occupied zone. Free zone was led by the Vichy government, what was under the Nazi also. It was a little bit more freedom there, but still it was pretty bad how it was in the occupied territory. So Rachel with her children decided to run there. Oldest daughter, Sarah, she was shot by the Nazi. And the next day, Sarah was dragged to the working camp, but she was have chance to give the Vianne her little son, who was 3 years old, and Vianne could protect him. But it became more and more stricter in the France, and soon it's supposed to be all Jewish, even children went to this working camp and how to hide Jewish child in the house. It was very dangerous, and Captain Beck, he was helped again Vienna, and he will bring to her fake documents to this child. So Isabelle was helping pilots to escape from the France, and Vienna was tried her friend. After some weeks, Isabelle, she was next to the Vienna house, and it was again bombs. On airplane, he was crushed, and there was a pilot, and Isabelle decided to drag and hide him on the Vienna house, even didn't ask her sister, and it was very bad idea because Beck was a man who was supposed to lead other Nazi to find this pilot, and eventually he found, but Vianne with Isabelle, they were killed him, and pilot was died too because he was shot pretty bad. Isabelle was shot too, but she was survived. Her friends from the resistance, they will help her, and to Vianne house was billeted as a Nazi, and it was pretty bad man. He was raped her, and he was not kind at all. He was like when he was sees that she is suffering and her children is suffering, but even during all this condition, Vianne became much more braver. Still she was afraid, but still she will help 19 Jewish people to hide and survive during this war. And eventually Nazis there were already desperate to find the Nightingale. She became very famous, and they tried to do everything that caught her, and eventually they did it. They started to torture her to understand who is Nightingale. she did a good job. She wasn't done anything to them, and eventually her father came. Father was also part of this resistance group, and he was work for them too, and he knew that Isabelle was caught, and he came and he said that he is Nightingale, and of course nothing was believed him, even when Isabelle was screamed that she is Nightingale, but nobody believed her because how this girl could be a Nightingale, famous Nightingale. So they will shoot her father and send her to the working camp where she was 9 months of the hard work. 20 people was dying, and eventually she had teeth and pneumonia. And after 9 months, when Americans was free them, she was in very bad condition, and she was came to home to her sister house. And Vianne, on that time, she was pregnant because that Nazi who was built on her house, he was raped her, and she became pregnant. And when war started to be ending, all Germans, they were back to their country, and they leave these villages. When they leave these villages, husband of Vianne was escaped from this working camp where he been to her, and he understood that this child is not his, but he was anyway trying to be a good father for this child and for Sophie, her daughter, and they start to be renew their family. So Isabelle back to the Vianne house, and Vianne was trying to do everything that comfort Isabelle. Isabelle, she understood that she would be so die, and she has less and less power. She is coughing with the blood. She couldn't eat anything, and on the last her day, it was Charlotte Gaillon, her love for her whole life, and he was find her, and she was died on his hands. And we see that Vianne already is old woman. She is after shows it's 1995, and she was living in America, and she has older son who is a doctor and whose name is Julien, and he is helping her. And she has a cancer, but Julien is a doctor and he is trying to help her, but it's already too late. But on the last months of her life, she was received a letter from France that she was invited to renew of this World War II resistance people, and she was show up there, and she was seeing Gaillon, and he was already old, and he has a daughter whose name is Isabelle, and he said that he was whole life loved her sister, and also she is met with some other people who was also part of this group of resistance. And afterwards we understood that Julien is his son of the Nazi, but he would never find out about it. And Sophie was died when she was already adult woman from the cancer also. And she was all the time next to her mother and was trying to protect her mother. Ari is this Jewish boy who was back after war to his real family, to his aunts, to Canada. He was growing there, and when it was a 3 in France, he was come to see Vianne, and he was said that he remembered her, and he became very good man seems, and that's it was how it ends this great story of Nightingale. And now it's my favorite part where we discuss what happened in the book, and how I said before, I was skeptical about this book, especially at the beginning. It was a many issue, but of course then further you are reading this book, the more you are thinking, oh my gosh, it's like so heartbreaking story. I thought that on the beginning already was heartbreaking story when Vianne's husband was mobilized. So sad sense between them, and already there wanted to cry, but I was still strong. I would say that Isabelle in general was very annoying for me during whole book. I understood that she is a pretty young girl. She is 18-year-old, but all this maximalism on that age, that she doesn't see any danger. She's just doing. She's pretty bold girl. And it is maybe somebody said wow, but I would say that it's very sad when girls do like this. It is, of course, it's useful during the war, but it was, and we need people like she, but still it's like sad about her, because from the beginning you already know that she would be end pretty bad. She doesn't know how to be careful. She doesn't learn what is bad consequences. She is just see goal and try to reach her, and doesn't matter what's on the way, because she's thinking that mostly it's nothing happen. Of course, that she thought that it could be happen, and it's like, you know, when you are 20s, you have this like, okay, I can do it no matter what. I can do, I will survive in some way, everything would be alright, I can do it. When you're already older and older, you start to understand that probably it's like you need to be careful in here and here and here. It was for me, was a little bit laugh on that moment when I see Gayon in the ends like forest. It's night and some man, and she's young girl, and it's already kind of scary, right? And they will start to talk, and he just like, I escaped from the prison. Are you afraid of me? And she just like, no. And that's moment when I understood that she would have really trouble on the future, because you have to be afraid of this. It's okay to have a fear, because if people wouldn't be afraid of anything, we would be pretty fast die. It's like when we have fear, we are more thinking through the situation and how to do in the best ways to reach a goal, but make yourself safety. But Isabelle seems that she didn't have it at all. And we even see that on the future when it was her resistance who was saying, okay, calm down a little bit. Don't do so often crossed from the mountain, because Nazi really tried to find you, and she was just like, whatever, like I will do. But sometimes I think kind of on this situation, maybe if she would be like more careful and not so often cross the mountain, maybe it would be harder for Nazi to find her, and she even could more people to save. So, I mean, of course, it was like heartbreaking her story, and especially what had happened with her on the end, after this camp. But I mean, that's the great example for what we have a fear. We have fear that to be more cautious and that more to look for next moves. And to analyze situation and think what it would be for best for us and for other people. We have one interesting conversation here is what is I have almost every month the same conversation with my brother. He's living in Ukraine. So yeah, that's the example of this. Surrender France to Hitler. It must be for the best, her sister said calmly. You've heard about Marshal Pétain. He is a hero unparalleled. Unparalleled If he says we must quit fighting, we must. I'm sure he'll reason with Hitler. You don't reason with men like Hitler. So you know more than our heroes now? I know we shouldn't give up. If Marshal Pétain thinks surrender is best for France, it is, period. At least the war will be over and our men will come home. Will come home. You are full. Fine, Vianne said. And this conversation, what has every Ukrainian now with family. It's always, I think, in the war, it's one who is like already tired of the war and they're like, okay, we surrounded, then it would be for the better in some way because maybe men would be back to the home and we can live. Of course, it would be hard life, but still we can live all together and it would be end of the death. And others say, no, we haven't give up, we should fight back. And my opinions of this, that you always have to do your best and what you can do. So I very like Vianne in this book. I know that Isabelle is hero and it's actually a book about Isabelle, but I actually more like character of Vianne. It is true that they both heroic their way and Isabelle was tried to fight during the war her way and Vianne her way. But I was many times already said this much easy fight when you don't have family. When you have family, you always look back. And it's like much harder to put yourself to the danger when you have family, when you have children, what is belongs to you and it's like responsible you have to them. So it's like I always say, if you are mother, if you're father, you already not anymore has responsibility only for your life, how it was with Isabelle, right? And she was responsible of her life and she couldn't understand how Vianne could be just quiet and don't fight back because she just didn't have a children. She didn't know what is responsible is it. And that's how I said before, we need people also like this who is pretty bold, who will reach goal no matter what, who doesn't has any fear. And I think we also need these people who is like Vianne, who is like quiet, who is like trying to figure out how it would be better because she still was help these Jewish children and she knew that it would be dangerous not only for her but also for her daughter, but she still did this step. But how we see, she was much more careful than Isabelle because she knew this huge weight of responsibilities. So what I have said before, is it war, is it not war? You have to do your best in this situation, what you have now, step by step. Right, it's pretty cool to be not fear of anything, but fear just give us chance live longer. So, and of course, you shouldn't, if it's something seriously, you never have to follow your emotional, how it was Isabelle. She is more this emotional person who is following her emotion, who is do afterwards to think. That's what is like, especially, situation like with a war, it's much more dangerous to yourself and to people around you. What's also interesting about this divided France, because I don't remember that I was learned something like this. So this information was interesting for me because I thought that before France was occupied totally, no, but they have like free zone. What is was led by Vichy government, but Vichy government was under the Nazi, and in the free zone people had some a little bit more freedom, but still it wasn't so much, and they kind of was suffering the same how it was in the occupied zone. But how we seen afterwards, like France decided to take even free zone also. So yeah, it seems that if you want to be safe, you need like maybe like to the Spain or Portugal, somewhere there where you're going. And another what I want to read, it's in the 1992 about Vianne, when she was saying, I know these modern seat belts are a good thing, but they make me feel claustrophobic. I belong to a generation that didn't expect to be protected from every danger. And that's maybe funny, but I think I was to the generation belongs to, because in Ukraine, we are different race than in Europe, in US, and even still like seatbelts, plenty people don't use in Ukraine, and a lot of this safety stuff, what is here, we don't use, and of course, it's better to use it. It's what make your life longer. So just use seatbelts, use this like mat to the bus, because it's slippery there, like it's better to use. But I know that last generation and the people from countries like Ukraine, they are not so about this like safety stuff. And if to continue to compare our countries, it's another what it was strange for me in this book, that Rachel, she has this son who is 3 years old, and she was just like, okay, I need new diapers. And that was surprised me because diapers it's usually expensive, and I bet it's expensive on that time during the World War II, so they don't have food, but they have diapers. How it is happened? First and second, it's like a boy, he's 3 years old, and I think it's already time to the potty train to do to him, because yeah, I mean, like, that's strange, because that's the point that like during the war you growing and you became adult faster. And what it's we see with Sophia also, that she is it was like pretty terrible. Her life was totally broken because of the war, but she is became adult much faster. And Vianne was just like, I need to get up to make a breakfast for my child. I'm coughing, I feel bad, but I need to get up to make breakfast for 10 years old. And okay, I think like 10 years old, it's like that age when child can make breakfast for herself, especially if it's like only water and some a little bit porridge. What's the problem, right? Like, it's like seems that like children, they like kind of like not prepare for this at all. I mean, like, because now it's I think like children much more already independent. I mean, like when I was 11, I was make Christmas dinner for my parents because they were working, and I was but only by myself at 11 years. I was did like Christmas dinner for them. So they came to the Christmas and dinner was ready. At 8 years old, I remember in the village of my grandparents, they have oven, but it was inside woods. It wasn't gas, it was not electric oven, it was wood. It's like you can just regular how much heat you need. It's not working like this. It's fire. And I was every morning wake up and make breakfast, and I had like this like huge cast iron pan, and it was bigger than me. And I was like in fire and cast this iron pan, and I was trying to fry eggs. So, and that's actually what another was strange for me in this book. I would even read it because I was surprised actually to read it. When darkness fell again, she redoubled her efforts to keep morale up. Even so, she felt sick to her stomach with fatigue and pursued with thirst, she kept going. There was no way to stop them. She just had to watch them fall and help them get back on their feet when they came to a breathless, broken stop. It said about Isabelle how she was help soldiers, these pilots across the mountains. Isabelle, who is like 19 years old, young girl, who is never was trained for the war. She is helped soldiers who supposed to be trained for the war, like adult men, to don't give up and cross the mountain. What is this? I mean, okay, I will explain why I'm so surprised. Because my great-grandfather, he was fight in the war, and my grandfather, he was child from the war. So he was 7 years when it was the war, and I already was seeing how he is never complain. He is very strong. He is never complain. He actually had some disease, but I have no idea even about this. It was with the bones aching. And I have no idea about this because he was working from the sunrise until sunset, and it was hard work. And how I said before, when I was made a breakfast with this fire oven and with cast this heavy pan, it was very huge. And one time I just was panicking because I didn't know what to do because eggs start to burn, and I tried to take this pan and I couldn't because it was very heavy for me, and I was already start to cry. And my grandfather, he was show up and took this hot frying pan. It was like very hot, burning, with his bare hands, and just like coal took it and put like next. I just like was shocked because it was like hot, this cast iron pan and with bare hands, and I just like, oh my gosh, what is a strong man here, and he was on that time like 70 something years. So that's like why I'm surprised, because it's soldiers and they already seen many bad stuff during the war. They were trained for this, and they're supposed to be like much more stronger than in this book. For me, it was very sad to read all of this, how people were starving, how they didn't have food, how little children wouldn't have food. It was very hard to read, and especially when it's like Vianne and this Captain Beck, but it was very good man, and I was actually very sad when he was died, and I was very thankful after that she was shot that person, it's not about good person or bad person, it's about their actions. People, they decided usually by themselves they're doing good actions or they're doing bad actions. Here says that you need to kill Jewish, homosexualists, you haven't give food to the people from the occupied territory, you have to bless this Hitler, and it was such a huge propaganda of all of this, but it wasn't that Hitler said, okay, go and rape certain woman, right? It was soldiers was by themselves decide or not decided, because it always depends on the person, how he is behavior. And Captain Beckett was shows that some people, they had also families, they also were try to do their best, but of course they couldn't avoid if Hitler said to them something, because if they would be don't listen him, it would be suffering and probably killed his family. So he didn't have choice. But he was have choice to some way to help at least Vianne. and he didn't ask something more from his help. So when he was died, I actually was very upset because I doubt that many good Nazi was there. Like, I think it was like few people from all of them, and this like one of kind of good Nazi, if I can say this. He was died, and that was sad. And especially, of course, I knew at the beginning that he would be died, but still it was sad how he was died. That because he was trust Vianne, and eventually he was died because he was trust. And that's the point, that like what we shouldn't trust to anybody, kind of, like, because only that people who we are trust can hurt us the most. I was like also how after was shot about French police, how they were cruel to their people, and that's what I think the worst one, when you know that Nazi is your enemy and you need to fight against them, and that's, I mean, okay, it's enemy, but what is bad, that people who you know whole life, who you raised children there, like how it's Vianne was raised children of some police people of the French, and they were like just took your best friend and her children and didn't care, and that's what is, I think, very bad and very sad, when it's your own people betrayed you, people who is like French police who's supposed to protect you, was against you, and in some way even more cruel than Nazi. When it was another Nazi was lived with Vianne and he was raped her, and she was thinking after that, like, oh, what is my husband Antoine would be think about this? And I was just like, seriously, what he would be think about this? It's I mean, like, it's even not so much problem, like, because in the war it's happened very, very bad stuff, very scary stuff. What is on the future, probably you never even mention it, but what is would be change you forever. And it's was very bad situation for her. She was starving, her daughter was starving, she was help Jewish children. It was everything dangerous. It was a lot of violence. And eventually, what is my husband won't think about this? First, at least, if what he would think, but if he's alive or no. What I was very angry for after, because I already use that American authors usually, when it's about World War II, they usually writing, okay, so Nazi was occupied, people is suffering, but it's come Americans and they would make freedom, and they're like hero come and attack the Nazi and had victory by victory by victory, and on the end, when it's already 1945, and Soviet Union come to and did something, and there's victory. So it's usually not so mentioned about Soviet Union there. But it's okay, because in Soviet Union books, the American also mentions the Jews, so that's fine. But what is after was saying in this book, that's 1945 year, and USA, of course, had victory by victory by victory from one side, and from other side, it's come Russians, and have victory there too. Russians. It wasn't Russians, it was Soviet Union. It was Soviet Union soldiers who is come and was attacked, because in Soviet Union it was 15 countries who was all was part of this war, because my grandfather, he was Ukrainian and he was joined to this war too, and he was actually in the fourth wars joined. So Soviet Union was for Estonia, it was Latvia, it was Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Moldova, and others 15 countries was part of Soviet Union. So it wasn't Russian scam. That's what is actually one of the Russian propaganda. It wasn't Russians only come. It was Soviet Union soldiers come, and they all together was part of this victory of the Nazis. And conclusion, we can keep talking about this book a lot, because here many interesting stuff what we can talk, and this book, I think if you more and more would read it, you would more and more will find stuff what you can think, what you can talk, what you can discuss. That's very meaningful book, and you have to read it. You have to read just that to a little bit to understand that atmosphere, what was your great grandfather probably part of this, and how it was bad, how it's people were starving, how people was suffering, and what is actual luxury life we have nowadays, what we have to be appreciated and thankful every day about this, because even that we have peace, it's already huge luxury stuff for us. Also, actually, I was like, that was 2 times. It was first this war time, and another it was future, 1995, and it was old lady. And when you will understand that it was not Isabelle but Vianne, because first, of course, I was thought like, what is that woman? Afterwards, I was understood that it was Isabelle. But on the middle of the book, I was already understood that it was Vianne, because Isabelle, she wasn't changed so much. She was doing afterwards think, and she did a lot of dangerous stuff, and especially when others say like, okay, calm down a little bit because it's too dangerous, and she just like, no, it's not dangerous, I will do it. That time I was understood that she would end bad, and it would be that old lady would be her sister. And the end was so crying moments, so much cry. But you definitely have to read, especially if you like historical fiction. That's one what you have to read. I just like to understand how people were lived. So that's different 5 from 5, and that's very great book what it would be joined to your library. I'm happy that you were all the time with me, and all of us, we have our thoughts about certain books. So if you have like the different thoughts, put your comments, and please support my channel. Subscribe, like, and see you on the discuss next book.